Bryce Hall, I don't really know much about the guy. I'm going to be honest with you. I know that he is some kind of influencer or something like that. And, you know, that's all good. TikToker, whatever he is. I legit don't know anything about the guy. To my understanding, this is what I have heard about him. Basically, even before the YouTube boxing thing, he would show up to these influencer meetups and he would just pick fights with people. That's my understanding of the guy. Really don't know that much else about him. Just a dude who likes to fight. Probably likes it a little bit too much. And hey, I like to fight. Like, fighting is fun. Don't get me wrong. But I'm not going around to influencer meetups and like picking fights with people. Even if I was an influencer, I wouldn't be doing that. You know, it's just kind of weird. You know, that would be like I don't know what to compare it to. I don't know what to compare it to, but it just feels weird. You know, when you go somewhere thinking I'm gonna get into a fight today, it's odd. But he has had a few fights, and he ended up getting himself into a funny situation. He ended up having a fight in BKFC last night. You know, spoiler alert. Oh man, he ended up winning. There was some weirdness about it. Not weirdness insofar as like, you know, oh, I think it was staged, or the referee was crooked, or the judges were crooked, or anything like that. There was just, to my understanding, some like weirdness about it, right? Something happened, and for some reason, his opponent, Guy Perez, or G Perez, I would assume it's Guy because his name is like Guillermo or something like that. Guy Perez could not continue after the second round. You know, so we're going to go ahead. We're going to take a look at that. So Bryce is going to be in the white trunks. Guy is going to be in the black trunks. I'm not going to do audio or anything like that. We're just going to go ahead and take a look at it. So let's go ahead and get started now. All right, so they're both on the scratch line. All right, so Bryce going feints. The way Bryce fights, like, every time I see it, I'm just like, yo, like, that dude's going to get K the fuck O'd one day. So he ends up rushing in, he ends up closing the distance, and he ends up throwing an overhand after a few other punches that he used to close the distance. I think that was opportunistic. I don't think that was set up in any way. He kind of caught him behind the ear, and I think it was more that he just sort of fell over than it was him actually being, like, hurt in any way. You know, you can see he got up right away. He was good. Talking about Guy, of course. So Guy throwing a jab to the body. No one's really going for it right away. That was a left hook from Guy, though, that landed. It didn't really land flush, though. So Bryce is walking forward, and he's using head movement to walk in. I will say that's good. The way Bryce fights, one of the issues that I have with him, okay, shooting in for the double leg over here. I was saying the way that Bryce fights, I have an issue with the way he fights, right? But he seems to have kind of patched one of the holes. Guy seems to be a little bit hurt, something about the back of the head or something like that. That was not a knockdown or anything, you know? The referee is going to go ahead and give him some time. But yeah, the way Bryce fights is he just kind of walks forward a lot of the time with his head up, right? Now, in this fight, I will say, like I said, he patched a hole or two. He ended up, when he would move forward, he would start, you know, dipping his head. He'd start using head movement, and he'd start walking in while throwing. That's something that, it doesn't look pretty, but it's actually a lot more technical than anybody realizes. And in addition to that, it's a, you know, it is head movement, right? It just is head movement. So I will give him credit. He's improved a little bit from what I've seen. I have seen one of his fights, I think, with Austin McBroom. And he just kept getting bopped in that fight, if I remember correctly. All right, so here we go. The thing I don't like, though, is that his chin is all the way up. That's the one thing that I really don't like about the way he fights. And if somebody gets on the inside with him, he's in trouble. So nobody's really... Yeah. You see, Austin wants to try and stay away because he's the taller fighter, right? He wants to keep Guy from getting inside. Now, Guy naturally wants to get inside. Look away, Scott is trying to hypnotize us. I know, right? I almost was like, nah. So, a couple of jabs across from Guy. Bryce is just being evasive. I think the referee just warned them to start actually fighting. So, pawing jab from Bryce, hook from Guy. Oh, a couple of those landed from Guy. That was good. Oh man. So, I ended up hearing that Guy broke his elbow, and I'm wondering what he ended up breaking his elbow on. I wonder if it was a punch of some kind. I mean, stranger things have happened than that. You know, if you get hit in the elbow, like that can hurt. You know, like especially if you're in Muay Thai, right? You're sitting here throwing elbows all day, right? You start to feel it like right here. Now, the elbow joint is very strong compared to other joints and things like that. It's probably, I don't know if it's the strongest, but it's one of the stronger joints that you have on your body, right? And that's part of the reason why it sucks to hit somebody with so much, right? Because it's kind of big and it's pointed a little bit. The way that it's shaped, it just makes a good surface to try and dig into somebody with. Like I said, if you're throwing elbows on the pads, you will start to feel it eventually, right? Maybe he just got hit the right way. Maybe there was an issue with his elbow beforehand. Who knows? It seems as though there was some like something genuinely wrong with his elbow, you know? Because especially in the first round of a fight, you typically don't feel if you're injured or anything like that. For something to really break through that wall, that barrier that the pain typically cannot get through, it has to be something like for real, you know? But we're going to go ahead. All right. I will rewind just a little bit because I think it's going to start quick. So, all right, we're going to go now. All right. So towing the line again. So Bryce is the taller fighter, so he can get away with it a little bit, but he's keeping his hands real low. And again, his head is real high. It's not good. He's already got caught. Now, he is a tough kid. I'll say that much. He's basically just coming forward, throwing with his hands down. That's not good. I know he wins this fight, but he's going to get caught eventually, and that's how he's going to get caught. Somebody's going to come in with a gazelle punch or something like that. So Guy is standing lefty. I forget if he was standing lefty the whole fight. I feel like he might have been, but I'm not 100% sure. So Bryce ended up doing something interesting to close the distance. He ended up batting down the front hand of Guy, and he came with a right hand right up the middle. A little bit of clinch work. Clinch work is interesting. I'm gonna do a series about that on my Patreon in the future. Not to shill in the middle of a review, but I don't have much to say about the clinch itself right there. I guess what I could say is that when it comes down to it, the clinch is a shit show, and you just got to be comfortable with firing in the middle of a shit show. Whoever's more comfortable with just throwing when they're uncomfortable, they're going to be a lot better. Now, both of them are just sort of sitting there. Ooh, that was a nice right hook from Guy, and I think that hurt Austin a little bit. Like I said, Austin's a really tough kid. He can take a punch for sure, but it doesn't mean he's invincible. And I think Guy probably could have closed distance, and I think he probably could have made that a little bit more worth it, right? Or he could have utilized that a little bit more. Of course, Bryce is just sort of running away at this point. Bryce comes in, he throws a couple. I don't think either of them really landed like that. It's interesting because Guy is winning right now by my estimation, if I'm just being 100% honest. Bryce is a little bit cut up. It looks like the eye, you know, kind of around here. And there is the end of round 2. Now, before it ended up stopping, I don't know if you guys could see, but Guy, yeah, at that point, right, I'm not sure if you noticed or, you know, were really paying attention or anything like that. Guy's face, you could see him wincing in pain. By the beginning of round 3, he could not answer the bell, so Bryce ends up getting the win. It's interesting because I actually think that Bryce was losing that fight for the most part. He was tentative, he was a little bit nervous, you could see, and he was getting pieced up in a real way. He's a really tough kid, right? But you could see when he would get hit, his head would snap, right? That's not because he was getting hit nice and light or anything like that. He was getting hit hard. I think if it continued in the way that it did, there could have ended up being a victory on Guy Perez's part via decision. At the end of the day, that's the fight game. People get hurt all the time. I think BKFC will benefit from this greatly because, I mean, this is probably one of the biggest stars that they have had on a card ever. Now I know they've had like Paige Van Zant. I know they've had Mike Perry, Luke Rockhold, other people like that, right? They've had a bunch of people, right? But it's not the same as having Austin McBroom, where you have a bunch of people who are not really interested in fighting in that way, who probably ended up watching this card, and they probably ended up getting quite a bit of revenue. In addition to that, I mean, Austin seemed to have a fun time. He seemed to have a good time. I'm sure he enjoys winning, right? Regardless of how he has to win. And because of this, who knows? He's probably going to end up being welcomed back, and he's probably going to end up getting paid pretty damn well. Bryce is probably getting paid a lot, and he's probably going to come back, and he's probably going to end up fighting again because he's going to get paid a lot. And plus, like I said, he does seem to enjoy fighting. Someone said that he said that someone I heard someone told me that he says, all right, that he's had over 100 street fights. That's really fucking weird to sit there and count the number of street fights you've had, especially because you're not that good, if I'm being honest. Like I know I could beat Bryce Hall. Like I know how I could beat Bryce Hall, you know? Bottom line, what I'm building up to is I think he will be back. He's going to get paid well. He's going to enjoy being in the spotlight in an actual fighting organization, not just like, not that Misfits is not a fighting organization, but it's not the same type of fighting organization as BKFC, right? He's probably going to enjoy that, right? Because he, as of right now, is the only one who can truly say that he has crossed over from YouTube boxing to real boxing. It's one thing being Jake Paul, who, like, I do consider Jake Paul to be a boxer at this point, but Jake Paul is not taking on dudes that are like legit competitors that are trying to make a name for themselves in boxing or anything like that. He's taking on named dudes for big money that he knows are retired. Therefore, even if he's not as skilled as them, he can try and outwork them in some way, shape, or form. Because he's younger, he's more athletic. In many cases, he outweighs the guys that he's fighting and things like that. These are guys who have been fighting at like 155, their whole careers, and he's fighting them at like 190, shit like that. Bryce Hall is really the first guy to make that crossover. We've had a bunch of dudes who crossed over from boxing or MMA into influencer boxing via Misfits, via an MVP card, right? But we haven't had anyone who has truly crossed over to the other side, except for Bryce Hall, So at the end of the day, congratulations to him. He did good. He's still got to patch a bunch of holes in his games. He's got to patch a bunch of holes in his game is what he has to do. And yeah, I mean, we'll see what he does in the future,